Did Iran intentionally strike an Apache attack helicopter? And how did an autonomous boat pull off the rescue? In the fog of war, early reports claimed the chopper was shot down by a missile, but that wasn't the real story. On a pitch-black night in the Gulf of Oman, an Iranian drone rammed straight into the helicopter, with the wreckage supposedly lodging in its rotor blades. Miraculously, the drone's warhead failed to detonate. If the igniter had made full contact, the blast would have been catastrophic. Instead, the aircraft went down, leaving the two pilots stranded in the water. So, who saved them? In a historic first, the U.S. military sent an autonomous drone boat. Because the Gulf is heavily monitored by Iranian radar, a manned rescue chopper was too risky. It relies entirely on passive radar, meaning it doesn't emit signals that the enemy can track. No rescue helicopter. No human crew. Just two stranded pilots and a robot that brought them home. As darkness fell over the region at 11:33 GMT, on June 8, 2026, an AH-64E Apache attack helicopter assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division was patrolling near the Strait of Hormuz, just off the coast of Oman. Inside the cockpit were two U.S. Army aviators, a weapons system officer in the front seat and the pilot in the back. But what brought down this advanced gunship? According to reports, it wasn't a sophisticated surface-to-air missile. It was a low-cost Iranian Shahed drone. To understand how this crash happened, you have to look at the profile of the weapon involved. A typical Shahed kamikaze drone is essentially a slow-moving, low-flying cruise missile that relies on pre-programmed GPS coordinates. However, a larger variant like the Shahed 139, which closely resembles the American MQ-1 Predator, can be actively maneuvered by an operator to strike targets. Still, under normal circumstances, an Apache crew should be able to see a drone like that coming a mile away. Given that kamikaze drones aren't designed to dogfight agile aircraft, so how did one manage to hit an Apache? The prevailing theory is that the downing was entirely unintentional. The collision likely took out the rotor blades, instantly rendering the chopper completely unflyable. The airspace over the Strait of Hormuz is highly congested and incredibly dangerous. At the time of the incident, the helicopter was hovering low over the water. Operating at such low altitudes creates intense radar clutter from the water's surface, heavily masking incoming threats and interfering with early warning systems. As the Apache held its low hover, a Shahed drone, likely en route to a separate target, crossed its path, resulting in a catastrophic mid-air collision. Whether the drone was actively piloted to ram the helicopter, or if it was simply a deadly miscalculation during a harassment maneuver, is still under investigation. What is certain is the devastating result. Shahed drones carry massive explosive warheads, often weighing around 100 pounds. Had the payload fully detonated upon impact, the blast would have disintegrated the aircraft into pieces. At approximately 7:33 p.m. EDT, the crippled Apache plunged into the dark waters off the Omani coast. Interestingly, unlike Russian attack helicopters such as the Kamov Ka-50 and Ka-52, American Apaches do not have ejection seats. For context, here's how a Russian helicopter actually ejects its pilots. The moment the system is triggered, explosive charges blow off the main rotor blades and the glass canopy in a split second. With the path clear, high-powered rockets instantly ignite, launching the ejection seats up and away to a safe distance. Instead, the crew is protected by energy-absorbing seats. These specialized seats are engineered to crush downward, absorbing massive amounts of kinetic energy in the event of a crash, to protect the pilot's spines. Thanks to this engineering and their own survival training, both pilots survived the violent impact and found themselves floating in one of the most hostile waterways on the planet. Rather than risking a traditional manned search and rescue helicopter or a Coast Guard cutter in an active threat zone, the Navy's Fifth Fleet made a historic decision. They deployed an autonomous drone boat. The vessel that answered the call wasn't a warship in any traditional sense. It was the Corsair, a sleek, low-riding, autonomous surface vessel that looked deceptively ordinary, but was about to make history. Designed for rugged, long-duration missions, the 24-foot Corsair can hit speeds over 35 knots and carry up to 1,000 pounds across 1,000 nautical miles. What made it the perfect extraction vehicle on June 8 was its 360-degree passive sensing capability. Passive means it emits no detectable signal. It does not ping radar. It does not broadcast its position through active sonar. It navigates in the dark, sees everything around it, and remains electromagnetically silent. In an environment saturated with Iranian radar and drones actively monitoring the strait, the Corsair slipped through the water without painting a target on itself or the downed crew, navigating entirely autonomously toward the GPS coordinates broadcast by the pilot's survival gear. It found them in the black waters of the Gulf of Oman. No rescue crew was put at risk. There was no dramatic hoist in the threat zone, no diver in the water, and no manned vessel illuminated by searchlights for hostile radar to track. Using their own strength, the two aviators pulled themselves onto the drone boat's deck. The Corsair then silently transported the crew away from the crash site to safety on the water. This is where all hell broke loose. Less than 24 hours after the Apache plummeted into the dark waters of the Gulf, the U.S. military retaliated. On June 9, 2026, acting on direct orders from President Donald Trump, American forces launched a coordinated, overwhelming wave of self-defense airstrikes against Iran. The flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, operating safely out in the Arabian Sea, became a deafening hive of activity. The operation commenced at 5:00 p.m. Eastern Time, shortly after midnight local time in Iran. This is Wave 1 blinding the coast. At exactly midnight, the offensive began, not with explosions, but with an invisible, paralyzing chaos. Before the first American strike fighters even crossed into Iranian airspace, Navy EA-18G Growlers unleashed a massive electronic assault, flooding the electromagnetic spectrum with intense jamming. As Iranian radar screens filled with static, the U.S. fired a volley of high-speed anti-radiation missiles. These weapons aggressively hunted down the emissions from coastal early warning radars, destroying the arrays and completely blinding the Iranian operators before they even knew what was coming. In Wave 2, the drone bunkers. At 1:15 a.m., with the skies successfully cleared of radar threats, the heavy hitters arrived. The airspace roared as strike packages moved in, armed with precision-guided bunker busters. Their targets were the heavily fortified ground control stations and storage facilities hidden along the coast, the exact locations where the deadly Shahed drones were housed, prepped, and piloted. In a matter of minutes, the hardened infrastructure was absolutely obliterated. In Wave 3, air defense suppression. By 2:45 a.m., panic had set in on the ground. Iranian forces scrambled desperately to activate their secondary surface-to-air missile batteries in a last-ditch effort to protect whatever infrastructure remained. But the U.S. had anticipated this exact response. A final lethal wave of stealth fighters and standoff munitions swept through the darkness. They systematically dismantled the active air defense batteries, neutralizing the SAM sites before Iranian operators could even lock on to a target. And if you don't want your data to get compromised by spam mails, jump calls, and online breaches, this data doesn't just result in spam and scam attempts. It can also affect your insurance rates and ultimately will lead into a loan denial just when you might need credit. Incogni helps protect your privacy by regularly scanning and preventing data brokers from re-uploading your information. You'll also get a clear real-time dashboard to track the status of your data. As an add-on with Incogni Unlimited plans, you can gain access to this custom removal tool. That's where Incogni comes in. Just copy the link of any site exposing your information. Go to the custom removals tool, paste the link, and click submit. That's it. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code AITELI with the link below at incogni.com/AITELI and get 60% off on an annual plan. But Iran has to send a message aimed straight at the heaviest concentrations of American military power across 3 different nations. First, Bahrain. Missile warning sirens wailed across the island as the IRGC unleashed a swarm of suicide drones. Their target: the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters, the absolute nerve center for American naval operations in the Middle East. Second, Kuwait. Total chaos in the skies. Kuwaiti air defenses had to scramble instantly to intercept incoming Iranian attacks. Bearing down on the Ali Al Salem Air Base, a massive hub for the U.S. Air Force. Third, The Jordanian military was forced to swat at least 5 incoming Iranian missiles and drones right out of the sky. We build every animation from scratch by real human. Subscribe so you never miss a beat.